Okay, so today I've got an amazing guest with me today. His name is Felix, and he's got an impressive background spanning 20 years driving service management transformations. Now, Felix has played many roles over the years, but over the last 10 years, Felix has led architecture and technology enablement teams for many clients at Big Four consulting organizations. Now, today, Felix plays a technical leadership role, shaping solutions, building and leading architects and developers, and helping and advising clients through their ServiceNow transformation journeys. So, Felix, a huge welcome to you, and thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Yeah.
So always happy to talk ServiceNow, right? There's nothing wrong with that in my.
Amazing. We all love ServiceNow. So yeah, that's amazing. And, you know, I think for many people, because obviously you're based in Canada, for many people around the world who perhaps don't know much about your journey and your background history, could you first tell us a little bit about yourself, how you first got introduced to ServiceNow, and how you've achieved such great success to be in the position you are today?
Sure. That's do you want the short version, the long version, the medium version? Okay, let's
Well, I think the listeners will want to hear the best version possible.
The best version possible. Yeah. Okay, so so I got, funny enough, I did an undergrad on engineering, right? So my background is engineering. I did an bachelor's in electronics and telecommunications engineering. I graduated in 2000, right? That was a long way back. But when I graduated, there was the dot-com bubble, right? That's what I graduated into. And when I was finishing school, basically all of my cohort that was getting new jobs, etc. Everyone was going into telecom, right? It was just booming, right? There were a lot of things going on, a lot of exciting opportunities, right? A lot of that, right? So that was kind of what I was looking for. I thought that I was going to be a network architect doing, Cisco configuration, right? Those kind of things. That was kind of the path that I thought that I would be. But when I graduated, there was absolutely nothing, right? Absolutely, it was demolished, right? So I did my undergrad. I am a Mexican, right? So I did all of that back then. When I graduated, basically, there were no opportunities, so I came back to school, right? So I pursued a master's. And while I did that, I had to find a job, right? So I started working in contact centers, right? So it was a customer care supervisor for a while. It was just something to pay the bills. And you know what? It was interesting for me because it was very different from all of the engineering stuff. It was just challenging me, helping me grow in terms of skills that I had never been exposed to. Right, so that kept it fairly interesting for me. But as time passed through, right, I realized that I was getting good at it, right. So I developed kind of a set of skills. So that led to other opportunities. So I became customer care supervisor. At that point in time, because basically the dot-com bubble was demolish anything related to technology. Basically, anything related to outsourcing contact centers was huge back then. Right, so that was moving. So that led to opportunities, right? So because I started in contact centers, basically I started with a company that was somewhere around 100 people. I stayed with that company for about 5 years, close to 5 years. But when I left, it was around 1,000 employees. But with that came a lot of opportunities for growth, right? So I had the opportunity to become a supervisor. Then I was the major incident manager, right, for the organization, and then I became the manager of IT, right, of frontline IT people. When that happened, basically there were no processes, no tools, no nothing, right? So that was my first experience in terms of ITSM, because I had to find everything, right? So I looked up, basically references out there for, what would be a good way of dealing with those kind of things, and started finding tools. I found ITIL 2, right? So I took ITIL 2, I took some of those standards and basically just incorporated some of those into the operation. I built a tool from scratch for ticketing, right? It was like a dinky .NET-based solution because I really didn't have any money, right? And my boss wouldn't actually, allocate any dollars because no one see any real value into, spending a lot of time with ticketing tools and those kind of things. So I had to build everything from scratch. The people that I had working with her, because eventually we grew, I had to coach them as well, right? On anything related to how to deal with IT tickets, right? All of that. Eventually, what happened there is, it became a mature organization, right? So I realized that I got really addicted to, just driving that uncertainty, big ambiguity, right? Help, put some structure around things that was pretty motivating, right? So then I looked for other opportunities to do something along those lines. So then I moved to a company that back then was called ACS, which later got acquired by Xerox, and now I think it's part of Atos. But it was really the whole thing was IT services, right? So it's taking over IT services, different challenge, right? But it was something along those lines. Eventually, it came back to ITSM tooling. I did a lot of pre-sales, and then I moved to Canada in 2009 with the idea that, okay, so I had a great run in Mexico, right? But there's only so much you can do, right? It's because you're always there's a ceiling, right, into the kind of things that you can take because you're not there, right? So I realized, well, okay, so if I want to do something better, I'm going to have to move. So I moved with my wife, right? So we came to Canada with the expectation that, things are going to be different, probably going to start back again from, not from zero, right? But it's not necessarily you're going to take on, basically all the things that you could do back then. I did an MBA. And when I did my MBA, I thought that I was going to do finance, right? So that was my idea. Okay, so I'm going to move to finance. That's what, moves in Toronto. That's really what I'm looking for. After doing a couple of courses on finance, right, I realized I don't like finance, right? It's, the concepts are good, but it's dealing with accountants all day. That's just not for me. It's going to kill me on the inside, little by little. Then I found consulting. So I thought, okay, so I'm going to do consulting. So I started looking for organizations in consulting, and it wasn't long before I was able to find a place, right? So I remember when I joined my previous employer into consulting, I thought that I didn't think that I was going to do tooling, right? Go back to tooling and ServiceNow and implementations and those kind of things. That was, I honestly thought that I was going to be doing something else. But the first question that I got, when they were ready to make me an offer is, do you know ITIL? I was like, yes. It's like a fish in water when you're doing ITIL. So do you know ServiceNow? Heard about it. I don't know it that well. And I got started. And that has been nonstop since then. ServiceNow, ITSM implementations, right? Well, more than ITSM, it's just service management implementations using ServiceNow as the backbone, right? But that's really kind of the background on how I got to into the ServiceNow world, right? And what has happened over the years, it's I've been doing just ServiceNow implementation work for many clients, from advisory, roadmap development, architecture, implementations, either doing the project management, architecture, etc., a bunch of different things. But eventually I veered back to kind of the technical side of things in ServiceNow, because really what has been happening over the years, that's where the big gap is, right? There's like a huge demand for, I would say, technical skills in ServiceNow, which are a little bit different from anything else, right? Because now the skill set requires for people to understand both the process side of things, but also the technology fairly well in a way that you can understand what you can do with ServiceNow, how fast you can do it, and actually implement it, right? So it's kind of, I think there's this convergence of skill of both the functional and technical into one profile that, slowly are coming together to what an effective ServiceNow consultant needs to be, right? I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And so do you feel like for somebody that's perhaps starting off their career, that's a good path to go down, is to aim to be a ServiceNow consultant?
I think it is, right? I still think it is, but I think that the one thing that I would say is just when I graduated, right? It was, I thought that I was going to be doing something completely different from what I ended up doing. And what I thought it was just going to be like a temporary job, right? It ended opening up a bunch of opportunities that otherwise I wouldn't have. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you need to be mindful of that, right? It's don't fight, right? The wave. It's ride the wave and be as effective as you can riding that wave. You do not know necessarily what it's going to look like, right? 10 years from now, but you know that if you're doing something, just try to get better at it, right? I think that's kind of the thing that I would say. The ServiceNow the right path?
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Probably, but maybe the skills that are required for ServiceNow today will be different 5 years from now, right? Maybe not. Maybe it's the same. No one knows for sure, right? But if there's a demand for something, is the best thing you can do is double down on that demand, build your skills up, because what's going to happen is, if you start getting in demand for something, it's going to snowball, right? The better you're at, the more in demand you're going to be, right? And eventually the more opportunities you're going to have.
Yeah, that's amazing, that is. And so in terms of like the demand, let's say in Canada, right, for ServiceNow professionals, like, if you had to pick top 5 in order, number one being the most in demand kind of job role that you can do in ServiceNow, what would you kind of pick? Like, what would you say? These are probably like the top 5, if you could think of the top of your head.
For ServiceNow? Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I'm thinking top 5. I'm not sure I can do a top. Well, maybe I can do a top 5. Well, let's give it a try.
Well, maybe top 3. Yeah.
First one, ITOM for sure. ITOM specialists, right? Those are in so high demand. I was thinking about this the other day. I don't remember who I was talking to, but the thing that gets missed from ITOM is people think about it as a ServiceNow skill set, but no. What ITOM is doing is basically automating all of what IT used to do. Right. So in order to be an effective ITOM person you need to have a broad understanding of IT, right? What are all these other tools, how an OS works, right? What networking does for you, right? In terms of, IT, how the security works, etc. It's a broader set of skills than just ServiceNow, right? So if you can effectively become an ITOM specialist, I would say it's more than likely you're really just a broad IT professional, right? I would say, right? That's why it's hard. I think it's not only ServiceNow. There's a bunch of other things that you need to learn as well in order to become a proficient ITOM specialist, right? That look a little bit different than the rest. Second one is also on the technical path. I guess we like to say architects, right? But more specific than that, it's the integrations, right? Know your integrations really well. When I say integrations, I'm not talking about someone that can talk data models, etc. only. Yes, that's part of it. But more than that is people that can really understand kind of integration frameworks, right? What is REST? What is SOAP? Those kind of scenarios. Authentication, security around integrations. What is generally accepted, conditions on how to do things, right? All that, that is and will continue to be in high demand, right? So we're kind of in a scenario where if you want to get the most out of your ServiceNow platform, you need to integrate it to everything, right? In order to automate things around the board. Beyond that, I think there's a couple of different new areas that are coming up. Definitely the AI stuff, I think it's still a little bit fuzzy on what that's going to be required. So it's not that clear to me, but I think those two are kind of like the first two things that come in mind. Not because other things are not essential, but in some other areas, there's already enough people out there that are doing it, that it's fairly easy to find, capable people that can do those kind of things, whereas these two other areas, it's always a struggle, right? It's always a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So with regards to like integrations, if someone was searching for a job, on the internet, on Google, right? What should they type in to kind of bring up so all those jobs come up?
Okay, that's a good question, right? So it's so in my mind, because I've done a lot of hiring over the years, right? So a lot of interviews, right? All of that. So the kind of things that always come to mind if it's someone that has no ServiceNow experience, I want to be able to see that, for example, if we're talking about integrations, do you know what are the commonly accepted methods for integration? Do you know REST and SOAP, etc., right? And do you know them fairly well? Can you demonstrate that you've done it, right? I think that's one key thing, and it comes across on how you write things. I think at some point it's fairly obvious to see the guys that just copy things from one place to the other because they think they're just buzzwords, but apart from different than the people that have actually done it, right? So there's certain things into how you frame things, kind of the challenges that you run into, right? Those kind of things that, you start talking to someone or you see it in the resume and it's just going to come different. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to have spent 3 years as an integration specialist for X, Y, and Z. There's so many ways that if you really want to today, you can learn all of these things and show that you know, right, without actually having to have your current employer, right, put you in a project that is related to it or even spending any dollars, right? There's so many tools out there, right, that you can do for build your little application, right, and integrate it to X, Y, and Z, figure out how that works, right, all those kind of things. So many out there, right? It's so there's no excuse that it's well, I haven't had the time, right, or my my current employer wouldn't allow me to do it, right, etc. It's well, if you really want to learn, you can learn, right? I think that's the beauty of today's,
yeah. Yeah. And just talking about learning, obviously, like, where would you recommend people to kind of go and learn? Like, is there any sources that you would kind of say, hey guys, go to these sources? Like, what would you recommend for somebody perhaps who's starting out in the industry and wants to learn? Where should they go and find this if their employer is not providing it themselves?
Well, I think so. ServiceNow provides an awful lot of training for free, right? So it's all of the documentation. You can get your PDI from ServiceNow, right? It costs absolutely nothing. You can play around with the thing, right? Just break it, do whatever you want. So many resources out there, so many YouTube. I think that's one of the beauties about ServiceNow is there's so many resources out there that can help anyone just become proficient in it. Funny enough, I have a book coming out in about a week or so, which is exactly that, right? So I think one of the things that I realized over the years, I've had to spend a lot of time just, which is always an interesting challenge, right? It's just helping people get acquainted with ServiceNow where they haven't learned anything, right? So really the focus was on this book was, okay, so I have someone that knows absolutely has no clue about ServiceNow. Okay, let me give you the tools, right, that you need in order to be effective. If you're going to take on ServiceNow as an administrator or as a manager, right, whatever that is, let me give you kind of the basics quick, right, so that you can get started and you at least kind of get your bearings, right, around, how to do things in ServiceNow, how it's going to work, the challenges that you're going to run, etc. Right? So yeah, that could be a nice
Yeah, that sounds amazing. What's the book called, Felix?
It's called Managing the ServiceNow Platform.
Perfect. And where can someone find this? Like, where is it being sold?
It's not out yet, but
okay.
I'll forward you the link once it comes out. It's I've been doing it with a publisher called BPB Publishing.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. So it sounds like it's like a real like dummies guide, right? Is it something that even I could pick up, right, and go okay?
That's it. That's the whole idea, right? It's you have zero experience with ServiceNow. It's read this, right? If you can get through the whole book, you're going to be way better for it. And then you can delve into all of the things that ServiceNow has to offer. I think one of the things that I realized is talking to many different people is, everyone wants to find a path for ServiceNow, right? But it's so broad now. I mean, 10 years ago was a completely different story, but right now there's so much to do in ServiceNow, so it's so easy to get overwhelmed with. with what the tool has to offer. So where do I start? It's such a hard thing to answer, right? So that was pretty much the intent is, okay, so use this to get started, right? Then once you have the foundations nailed down, you have some concepts in your brain, then you can actually figure out exactly what
yeah, that's incredible. And how did you even come up with this idea, like, to do the book?
Oh, well, a couple of different things. Well, for one, it's again, this is doing implementation work with ServiceNow. This is really where I found that I spend the most time, right? It's either coaching new administrators, developers, or people from our team, right, from the client's team, talking to security, right? Spend a lot of time talking to security, trying to get ServiceNow concepts nailed down in 30 minutes or less, right? For someone that perhaps don't have a lot of ServiceNow background, but they're pretty smart, right? Talking to enterprise architecture to figure out where ServiceNow needs to fit, right? And same story is I need to be as concise and as comprehensive as I can, but accurate, right? So I think that's always the thing that from an architecture perspective, I think that's the one thing that it's always very challenging. Is fairly easy. Well, I wouldn't say easy, but it's not as hard to find someone that knows all of the stuff that needs to be known. It's really hard to actually condense what needs to be known, right? It's in a quick and effective way, because the reality is most people won't have the time to go through all of the little neat details and nuances, right, around ServiceNow implementation, etc. So it's I found myself having to deal with those kind of scenarios pretty much all the time, right? Then it's something that challenges me, and I'm always learning, just as everyone else, right? But I've always found that this is kind of the ultimate challenge. How can you get across complex ideas fast, quick, in a digestible way, right? And that's kind of how it came to be. Well, that then basically the publisher reached out to us, hey, would you want to do a ServiceNow administration book? And I was like, yeah, totally. That makes total sense. I would love to do that. Happy to.
Yeah, why not? And you know what? I bet there's a lot of ServiceNow customers, who are implementing ServiceNow, and for them it is quite new. I think it'd be a great read for them as well, right? For them to kind of understand the bolts behind the system that they've got.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the whole idea, right? It's just something that you can get fairly quick through, right? And then from there, it's just use all the resources that are available to everyone, right? To make the most out of the platform for
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds amazing. And yes, I will be putting the link in the description. So please grab a copy, everybody. So amazing. And just talking about obviously learning, and in particular like the certifications, right, that ServiceNow have, how, in terms of areas of expertise, like, and especially people that are kind of establishing themselves, the beginning of their careers, what certifications would you recommend that people should do to kind of get a good grasp on the technology, but also to help further their career?
If you're starting from scratch, definitely you need to start with a CSA, right? The administrator certification for sure. That's kind of table stakes for anyone that wants to know anything around ServiceNow, right? So once you get that out of the way, I think some people might differ here a little bit on kind of their approach. For me, so the CAD, right, the application development, or the courses on scripting, etc. Those are good, but I mean, honestly, I think those things you can pick up along the way easier. Right now, these days, because there's so much built into each one of the products, I would say the mainline certifications for, say, if you want to become an ITSM specialist, right, CSM, etc., they're so valuable, right? I wouldn't have said the same, say, like 7-8 years ago, right? 7-8 years ago, there were a bunch of certifications, but it was not really that different from product to product. Now, every little product has their quirks, right? That you really need to understand them really well if you want to be effective, right, when you talk to clients. And a lot of it's already embedded in the ServiceNow courses that, allow you to be effective at the kind of thing that you do. So the mainline certifications are the ones that I would say you want to go for, right? It's after. So it's basically the implementation specialist for ITSM, CSM, right? All of those. If you have no idea of ServiceNow, I would start with the ITSM is the basic one. I think if you get your head around how ITSM works, right, I realized this is kind of like hard concept for people that are not close to ServiceNow to grasp, right? But everything in ServiceNow is a task, right? So you understand how task works. Basically, you can understand 90% of all of the other modules, how they work, right, from a technical perspective. So you will get your way around ServiceNow. Notifications work exactly the same, right? Business rules work exactly the same. Approvals work exactly the same way, right? So there's a lot of things that are pretty much the same thing. That's the benefit of the one platform, right? So if you go, for example, through the ITSM certification, you will get certified on ITSM. Odds are 99% of all clients have ITSM today, right? That's where everyone started. It's ITSM. And from there, it's a fairly easy thing to do to pick up on any other certification down the road, right?
Yeah. No, that's great advice. That's amazing, and that's really helpful as well. Especially like somebody wants to build their foundations. I think that's great advice. And ServiceNow it is rapidly evolving. Platform. It always has new features. It has updates. How can people stay up to date? And to make sure their skills remain relevant and in demand.
So I think there's a combination of. So that's a great question. Let me try to break it down into two pieces. I guess piece number one is, so how do you keep on learning, right? So I think the one good thing, if you're certified, I am a CMA, right? So as a CMA, you need to maintain all of this, the mainline certifications, plus you need to have, your SCMA points, right? So there's a lot of checkboxes that I need to follow. But that's in my book, that's a great thing because it forces me to be up to date, right, with a lot of things at ServiceNow. But it's a big time commitment, right? The truth is, it is a big time commitment. You do need to spend the time. I need to make time to make sure that I'm trained up, right, on all things ServiceNow, because it's kind of the commitment that you do when you take on something like that, right? The good thing about mainline certifications, it will force you to keep up to date, right? So every year, I think ServiceNow has changed it to every year now, right? But every year you need to renew your certification. So there's a list of, you need to go through a test, right? Get recertified, right? All of that. And it forces you to get reacquainted with everything that your mainline certification will do for you, right? So there's nothing like the docs, right, and playing around with your PDI, right, all that stuff to keep up to date. The other one is the experience, right? There's no better way to put it. It's if you want to keep up to date, you need to do, right? I think this is one of the things that people miss. It's in order to stay relevant is you need to do the work. If you're outside because, I don't know, you're too good to get your hands dirty, right, and roll up your sleeves and doing ServiceNow, you know what? All of your knowledge is going to become stale, right? It doesn't, because it's never static, right? So if you want to be an effective SME, right, in any specific area, you need to be a doer as well, right? I think everyone is kind of, getting to understand that, right? But at some point it's, you still need to be around and play and do things, right? With the tool in order to stay relevant, right? If you don't, it's, all the things that you do, they're going to become stale. So don't let them become stale, right? I think that's also kind of the caveat, right? One of the things that I realized over the years, it's when you work for someone, right, or you're doing ServiceNow work, but more broadly, just working with someone, you always you're doing two things, right? You're exchanging your time for for work, right? That is gonna give someone some value, right? Then basically you're gonna get paid for it, right? Something along those lines. But you're also learning, right? The learning goes back to your personal investment, right? Bank, and that is so hard to quantify, but it's so valuable. If you keep on learning, you're winning, right? It's not something that people are taking from you. It goes to your personal bank. So if you approach with anything with a mindset that I'm going to learn something, right? It's going to come to you. It's not going to come to anyone else, right? So even if it seems like, it's going to be, well, it's not what I'm mandated to do, right? Or something along those lines. But you know what you're going to learn? Why not do it, right? It's going to come back to you. That's something that you're going to benefit from, right? It's always a win-win, right? Those kind of scenarios, right? So it's don't shy away from those kind of things, I would say, right? That's really how everyone learns, right? It's just being exposed to new things and stretch yourself. Right?
Yeah, I love that. I love that line you said, learning is winning, right? Because, and like you say, if an organization, a company is offering for you to kind of do some certifications or any sort of form of training or even mentorship, right? If someone's giving you some advice, is take it because it goes with you, right? So wherever you go, it's building you up. So I think that's an amazing kind of mindset and way of looking at things, and that's the thing, like Felix, especially like people that have got to your position, that people kind of get a bit relaxed. They think, well, hey, I can chill out. I've done the hard graft. How do you maintain that mindset to keep on being inquisitive, to want to learn? Like, how do you maintain that mindset?
That's let me think about that one. I'll flip that question a little bit. I think one of the things I realize it's, especially when doing ServiceNow work, is I run into two types of, I would say, consultant, right? I would say it's consultant number one. It's in there for the money, or they think that it's going to give them some skills down the road, etc. They're not invested and not interested in the work, right? They don't get excited about just tinkering with things, right, with the tools, etc. That type of mindset, I find that, it will be great from some other roles, right? But if you want to build your career around ServiceNow or just technical implementation, etc., it will be devastating for you. It's not going to work. You're not built like this, right? If it's just going to become so cumbersome, so difficult, you're not going to find it fun. It's not going to excite you. Why are you doing this to yourself, right? I guess I would put it like that. On the other hand, if you love to play around with things, right? You're a tinker. You're always very curious, right, into how things work, etc. And you love to spend time there. Then it's gonna become just second nature, right? So if you're this type of person, right, and I know this is not everyone, right? Even talking about people that have gone through like CSC, right, courses, right, computer science, right, all of that, is I realize that not necessarily everyone is like that, right? There are some people that genuinely love getting into the weeds and just getting into the nitty gritty of things, right, and all that. And those tend to thrive in this kind of environment, right? Those that don't, they do really good, right? I find they really do really good, right? But it's better to look for an opportunity that is going to be centered around, so for example, sales, project management, all that stuff. Because otherwise, you're just putting yourself out for a world of hurt, right? That's what's going to happen. Why do you do that to yourself? It's in the end, I think one of the things that I realized, over the years, I built my career in a way that is comfortable for me, because I think the way that I want to think about my career, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? So I need to be able to run the whole thing. And I don't want to be in it 20 years. I want to be in it 40 years, right? So what is it going to take me for me to be, rapid, engaged, right? And happy with the kind of things that I do, etc. In a way that is scalable, right? And I think that's the thing that I've learned. So to your question, I think it's just finding the right balance that works for you. right? So if so, there's a little bit of stretching, right? A little bit of just making sure that you're doing the right things, things that are required to do your job effectively. And the other one is, dialing in on those kind of things that are gonna be make you effective and truly happy, right? With the kind of things that pursue. If you do that, I think you can be in it for forever, right? It's I don't think there's any limit, right? It's just most of the times I think you end up pursuing things that you think are what people expect out of you rather than what you want to do, right? But I forgot to mention this, right? But there's only one version of you, right? There, so everyone else is already taken, right? Have you heard that? That's pretty good, right? So if you try to emulate someone and exactly what they do, you know what? You'll find that might not be exactly what works for you, right? I think this day and age, we're kind of in a situation where, the world is so flat, right? And there's so many ability to become the best version of yourself. And people can reach out to you regardless of where you are, right? So the better thing you can do is, come up with that unique value proposition that is you, right? And just put it out to the world, and eventually that's gonna snowball, right?
Yeah, that's amazing advice. That is, and it comes down to even to the simple fact that find something that you love and you'll never work a day in your life, right?
Yeah.
So, and then everything comes with it. So yeah, I love that. And obviously being CMA qualified, right? So lots of people I know want to get on the cohort. Talk to me a little bit about that CMA program, and is it something that you would recommend?
Oh yeah, I would absolutely recommend it. It's where to start. It's definitely hard to get in, right? It's not cheap, right? But usually your employer needs to back you up, right? With the fees and all that. But it's definitely recommended. You definitely reap the benefits of the program. I think that the CMA program is geared towards those that have already spent a lot of time with ServiceNow doing I would say mostly technology-oriented work, right? So it's you've been an implementation specialist through a couple of products, right? Those kind of things. You know the platform really well. Something along those lines. You're probably a good candidate to become a CMA, but it is very competitive to get in, right? I was lucky to get in probably the first, when was it? Second year of the program, right? So it was early on, right? But it's because there's so much awareness and so much traction that the program has gotten. It's probably way more competitive now than it was before. I also had the benefit that I already had done a lot of work in ServiceNow when that came in, right? So I kind of puts you at the front, right, of the line, right? But it is totally worth it. I think the key thing to what is it that you're gonna learn, right? Is you're not gonna learn a lot of technical skills around ServiceNow because that is already expected out of you, to the program. I would say it's kind of like a mini MBA for technical people on ServiceNow. So what you're gonna learn is how to effectively communicate, again, tough technical questions, right? That is so valuable, right? It's super, super, super valuable, right? It's worth the investment, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I know so many people myself personally that would absolutely love to kind of get on that program. So, and yes, you're right. It's very, very competitive. And I think that, to be honest with you, I think last time I looked at the figures, there's less than 250 people worldwide who are CMA qualified. So you're quite a small pool at the moment. Yeah, no, absolutely. So look, this has been amazing. I think, look, my sort of last question I really want to ask you, okay, is if you could go back in time, okay, in a time machine and talk to your 21-year-old self, what advice would you give him? And this could be totally non-work related as well.
21-year-old self. I think I'm trying to think of a good answer for that. I would think is don't get too hung up, right, on things, right? It's just because you need to learn how to ride the wave. I think that's kind of the key thing. It's after all these years, you just need to learn to ride the wave. You don't know exactly how the end is going to look like. No one knows what the end game is, right? Just ride the wave. That's the best thing you can do. It's if you're outside in the ocean and you're trying to, you swim against it, are you going to be able to get through? Maybe, but you're going to get spent. But by far the best value that you're going to get is if you ride with the wave, right? So help understand those patterns of how things move and go with those rather than trying to fight against those, right? The best way to approach, say, for example, swimming or something like that is you want to go with the current rather than against it, right? So so meaning that, if you see that something is gaining traction, don't discount it, right? It's, there's, probably what it's just a small blip right now is going to become huge in 5 years from now. You never know, right? It's, if you try to force yourself into something, right, that exists today because that's what you're looking at, probably once you have the opportunity, it's not going to be a big thing anymore, right? So there's always kind of ebbs and flows, right? So it's important to don't get over attached, right, to how things are and what things will look like. I don't know exactly how my career is going to look in 5 years, right? But I'm excited about all the opportunities, right? So I think that's probably the best thing that I could think.
That's amazing advice. That's brilliant. So, well, look, Felix, thank you so much for today. It's been amazing to talk with you. And everybody, please look out for Felix's book. No doubt it's going to be fantastic. And I will put in the link in the description. But thank you so much, Felix, for your time today.
No problem. Thank you for talking, Farrah.
Thank you.